are aiming for every man, woman, boy and girl. Head into training.nti.org.bb, looking to see what courses I want to study. I am a Starr Bajan, it's true, and I believe this about you. Yes, I mean you. So here is what we have to do. Go tell all your friends and family. Go Sarah free for everybody. NTI, the gateway forward. So getting the transformation to make the country brand new. Start the journey today. Log on to training.nti.org.bb. Wanna hearing me? Training.nti.org.bb.
I'm sitting with Hayley Matthews, who is the captain of the West Indies women's cricket team. She's also from Bajan, Barbados. She's also the second best T20 all-rounder in the world. She's top of top. Hayley, thank you for joining me. Long time we're trying to get this organized now. Has it been nice being at home for a little stretch as a girl who spends her life on the road?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me out. But yeah, being at home, you know as well, traveling all over the world is quite tough sometimes. So just got to have a go on the road in a couple of days. But yeah, it's just been great to bring over Christmas and New Year with a bunch of family and friends. You know, see so many people that I haven't seen in such a long time, and yeah, kind of just get to chill out at my house a little bit and tone down before getting back on the road again.
You know, a lot of people say, you know, just being home, no matter where home is a big deal. But then your home is also Barbados. Yeah.
My home is quite nice, isn't it?
It is.
We just played England over here, and I mean, all the girls from the English team were so excited just to come to Barbados. You know, we have a beautiful country, all the beaches, and I mean, every time I think as a young person growing up and kind of starting to travel the world, you kind of say, oh, I can't wait to get out and see the rest of the world, but then you kind of realize no place is like home, you know. Every time you get the opportunity to just come back home and spend some time is amazing, and yeah, it's just crazy how quickly you can get homesick of a small little island like this, but yeah, it means so much at the same time.
It's massive. Hayley, you're 24. It's hard to keep track because obviously you burst onto the whirlwind stage when you were 16 or 17, so people almost perceive you as a veteran, but you're really still such a young woman. Can you just tell us briefly again how you became one of the best cricketers in the world?
I guess the journey started from just a little kid. I don't actually remember the story, but my father told me one day he was just outside with my brother, you know, playing a bit of cricket on the evening after my brother, who's 27 now, so just about 2 or 3 years older than me. They were playing cricket at home like they do every evening, and I decided I wanted to go outside one day and join them, and I think pretty much from there it's history. You know, I started at primary school at People's Cathedral, and my dad put me into Wanderers Cricket Club. It's famous for so many international cricketers like Craig Brathwaite, Jason Holder, Chris Jordan plays for England. So many of them were a part of Wanderers Cricket Club, coming through the cricket ranks. And yeah, then into secondary school I started playing women's cricket with Richard Clark. He brought me into the women's setup through my dad when I was just about 8 or 9, and was able to make my first under-19 team for Barbados when I was just 9 years old, which was quite crazy. I remember going on tour. And I didn't even know how to do my own hair at the time. And I remember one day I was sat there and my hair was naughty as because I've been on tour for about 2 weeks now and probably hadn't combed it as yet either. And the Andrew daughter said, come. She put me in a chair in front of her and just combed my hair through, took the comb, took the brush, like took everything through. And I mean, like you said, those are the experiences that kind of bring you through, but from such a young age, starting it was really, really exciting for me. And yeah, right after that, just when I was 12 years old, I managed to make my first senior team for Barbados and into West Indies when I was 16. So I think it was kind of one of those journeys that just went on from year to year, kept getting more vigorous and more exciting as it kind of went on, and yeah, it leads me, you know, to 8, 9 years later, still playing international cricket for West Indies at 24, and yeah, getting the opportunity not only to play but to lead the team and captain the team and be a part of that as well.
I want to talk diabetes. Diabetes is very much, unfortunately, associated with Barbados. 7 out of every 10 deaths in our country is from a non-communicable disease. 25% of our population are diabetic, and another 25% are potentially pre-diabetic. That's half of our country. It's a big issue. And I know you're a diabetic, a type 1 diabetic. Tell me how you found out and like that story.
Yeah, so I think pretty much one summer back in, I think it was 2010, I found I was going to the bathroom a whole lot. I was very, very thirsty and continuously drinking water, but my thirst would just not be quenched. Yeah, my father was a type 1 diabetic from the time he was 17, and from the time I said how I've been feeling, lackadaisical, and all the other symptoms that would have come with it, he pretty much figured what was up, yeah. So the very next morning, he told me not to have breakfast, and when he came home from his morning errands, did a fasting blood sugar level of myself, and it was 27.8, I think, which is...
But how do you know how to do that? Because your father was a diabetic?
No, he tested it.
Oh.
So yeah, I woke up in the morning, he came home about half an hour later, he told me not to have any breakfast because he wanted to do the fasting testing, and when he tested it, it was 27, which is obviously a pretty ridiculous number at the time, and we pretty much knew what it was from there. I went straight to the doctor's office. And a little bit of background on that, I think because my father was a diabetic from the time he was 17, so from the time I came into this world, I knew everything about diabetes. Obviously, him coming through with us, he would have had lows, he would have had highs, and myself and my siblings were pretty much doctors with diabetes from the time we were growing up, knowing exactly how it works, what insulin was needed for what low blood sugar meant, why low blood sugar happened, and I mean, it was sort of a blessing for me, just knowing about it beforehand, so that when I was diagnosed with it myself, I was able to have a bit of experience and a bit of knowledge on the topic. That didn't make it easy to deal with, obviously. Being a type 1 diabetic at such a young age, I was only 12 years old, was quite tough. There was a different kind of understanding you needed to have doing it on your own and by yourself. But at the same time, I was in a much better position than most would have been in at the time, having the knowledge around it.
Definitely you would have. And in fact, it's interesting. I also grew up in a home where I knew a lot about diabetes because my father was a diabetes doctor, very involved. His whole career was about that. So it seemed like a very regular thing. We talked about it a lot as a family. Obviously, your father was a diabetic. But did you get the sense when he was preparing you for this world or whatever, that Bajans were secretive about it or that there was some taboo about it?
I feel as though it isn't spoken about as much as it could be.
Why?
Sometimes I'm not sure if it's a lack of education around it throughout the country. I know there's a lot of different sources and a lot of different ways you can find out about diabetes. There's so many channels that if you want, you can have a read and have a see on diabetes. Yeah, but I think at the same time, the education is definitely the biggest part. And like you said, with 25% of the population being diabetics, that's such a high percentage.
NCDs, yeah.
Oh, NCDs.
A lot of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you can just get more educated around it, even if it's not you yourself, there's so many people out there that you can even help in the long run by just having a better understanding of what's going on.
Do you identify, like, you know, when people ask me, Alex, who are you? I would say first I'm a Jordan, then I'm a West Indian, then I'm a this and that. Do you identify as a diabetic? Is it part of your identity? Is it that all inclusive?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's something I have to go through every day of my life living with. So I mean, I'm Hayley Matthews, I'm a professional cricketer, but I'm a type 1 diabetic as well, and I think in my TikTok bio as well I have that I'm a type 1 diabetic, and look, I'm not ashamed about it. I want to be able to use my platform to spread education around this and help those who might not be able to see it elsewhere. And I think as a professional athlete with the platform I'm given, especially coming from a country like Barbados, that's obviously a lot smaller and probably doesn't have as much to throw out there or have as much of a platform to get things out there. It's sort of my responsibility that topics, especially ones like this, which I'm super involved in and a part of, I can at least play my part and try to get a bit more education around it out there as well.
Haley, you're a type 1 diabetic, which is different from the majority of, I believe, diabetic cases in Barbados, which are type 2. We know that the type 2 is about a lifestyle choice, what we eat, etc. We were talking a little bit off camera, but I want to talk about it here in terms of nutrition. Can you tell me a bit about how your perception of nutrition has changed in your journey.
Yeah, so growing up, I think in Barbados, like most people would, nutrition isn't something that's very, very widely spoken about. And it's not until I started playing international cricket and venturing out to other parts of the world that I kind of got the opportunity to experience what a better diet should look like.
Not reason why?
Not reason why, unfortunately not. But at the same time, even though I was getting to go to Australia and all over the world by the time I was 17 years old, it still took me a while to kind of take on board that diet was really, really important. So it just shows that here in the Caribbean, like you said, or here in Barbados even more so, with type 2 diabetics being the main source of our diabetics here in Barbados, we really need to, I guess, try to get more education around that we can focus a bit more on the diet and try to understand, I guess, how that diet helps you in certain walks of life as well.
Give me an example of how your mind changed about food. Give me any stories or anything.
I remember I played my first WBBL in Australia when I was just 17 years old.
That's Women's Big Bash.
And I remember it was mid-game, I had gotten up to ready and we were all just in the dugout watching the rest pass, and I felt a bit hungry, so I decided to head up to the lunchroom and make myself a sandwich. And I remember going up, I got my bread, white bread of course, don't want to see the brown bread.
Why not? Okay, for one strike.
Yeah, I don't want to see the brown bread. Got my white bread, added like my mayo or whatever I would have put on at the time. My chicken, my ham, and then, sprinkle a bit of lettuce for a little garnish or whatever the case is. That's how you thought about it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I shot my sandwich, put it in toaster, went back downstairs in the dugout to eat it. When I got back downstairs in the dugout, and one of the girls looked at me and she said...
Australian girl?
Yeah, one of my Australian teammates looked at me and said, what have you got there? And so I've got, my sandwich, and I've got chicken, I've got ham, and I've got some lettuce. And they went and looked at me and said, 2 meats? And I was like, yeah, I've got 2 meats in my sandwich. And they were kind of like in shock, as in, professional athlete, you're making a sandwich, you got your cheese, you got your mayo, and then you got 2 meats on top of it.
This like Hayley
This time I'm like, my God, that's just like... it just shows like a complete different perspective on diet.
They eat vegetable sandwiches over there.
Yeah, they eat vegetable sandwiches. Like, I remember they had like these little wraps. I can't remember what you call them now. But it's a very funny texture, like wrap, that you kind of just like put everything in and wrap it up like a little sushi ball type thing. And they would wrap it up with tomato, carrot, lettuce, wrap it all up and eat it on the tour we're driving. Like, let me stop with that.
McDonald's.
But
this is...
This when I was younger though, and I had no education around what was better as well.
To be fair, Hayley, this is even older in this country. This is how we live. I think it's like a perception about what is delicious and what is not. But if you grew up eating whole food, it's different, right?
Yeah, and I think for us in Barbados, it's just about kind of changing that culture a little bit. And yeah, look, at the same time, a lot more is coming into it now that the world is getting so much more progressive, and there's a lot more out there on the internet, even on Netflix. There are a bunch of different documentaries on eating and all that kind of stuff. So we see a lot of people eating better, but at the same time, there's so much more that needs to be done in order for us to change our lifestyles here in Barbados, and that can be done. And yeah, I just mean with the kind of platforms we have, that's exactly what we want to be able to try to push this. And as a diabetic as well, a diet is such a massive thing. I remember even with myself, back then, even up to 2 years ago, when I really started to take my diet on board and understand it a bit more as a diabetic, my insulin, obviously you count insulin in units, and at the time I was up to taking 15, 16 units with every meal, so I was up to, 45 units of insulin, and that's just short-acting insulin per day. And now I look at it now that I eat better, training properly, understand my portioning and how many calories, how many carbs, how much veg, how much protein I'm supposed to have on my plate. I'm down to taking 4 or 5 units per meal. And it's crazy. And
from 45?
No, 4 or 5 per meal. So I'm down to from 45 to about 15 a day now.
Wow.
Yeah, which is insane. And I remember speaking to my dad on it as well, and he's tried it out too, and I think in the last couple of weeks he's lost 15 pounds. He probably put off on a couple of Christmases myself as well. But
I'm sure.
But his insulin as well, he would have been type 1, so his insulin is down to 6-7 units from taking the same 16-17. So just shows how much diet can really change.
I want to talk about that diet specifically because we haven't even mentioned sugar. So how did you change your diet? What do you eat now, like on a day-to-day?
Yeah, so I kind of, obviously fast food, sugars especially, just try not to intake as much. And then when you look at how you portion out your plate, I think a typical Bajan with 2 spoonfuls of rice, a big square pie, leg and thigh, and then a little garnish of salad that you're probably leaving in touch on the end. Whereas now, I understand a lot more, and so I can still have my rice, and I can still have my pie, and I can still have my chicken, but it's about how much of that I eat and how I manage it and how often I eat it. So don't get me wrong, I'm gonna have my rice and I'm gonna have half a spoonful if I want. Have my pie a day, I'm gonna have a small square pie, but then I'm gonna make sure I get my protein in there. And if it's a case where I feel as though I might still be hungry, where I really try to package all my veg. So I might have a lot of like my pumpkin or my squash and use that to really fill me. Like have a lot on my plate more so. And then obviously you'll have your softer vegetables like your lettuce or your cucumber and stuff like that. But at the same time, because I kind of pack it up that way, it stops me from constantly being hungry. I know a lot of people's worries when on a diet might be I can still be hungry if I don't eat a lot. But if you just understand how to pack up your plate and what you can use more of, I think you'll have a much easier time right there.
And in fact, the science has now proven that processed food, the more you eat processed food, which means anything in a packet, right, it actually makes you more hungry. It doesn't quite, that's the business. That's the international food business, to make you not satisfied to want more. Correct. Anyway, I can tell you a real Bajan story, and this will just tell you about culture, because I think your taste buds change, right? If you're not drinking sweet drinks and you start drinking water, if you drink a sweet drink in 2 weeks after that, it can taste
I heard
sweet.
people talk about how they eat shafat for a little while and then when they went back to shafat and just smell it, like, it was like...
not as good, you just have to sort of change your idea. But I was in Swan Street the other day and my friend was buying a natural drink. So I said, Rasta man, I want natural drink, I want no sugar. You got something to do with no sugar? So he pulled out a turmeric water. He said, I got turmeric water. I said, perfect, that's not sweetened, right? Because, you know, even in this country, natural juices got sugar. And I'm like, what's the point? I come here because I want sugar. And food naturally has in sugar. It doesn't have to taste sweet. Anyway, so he didn't believe me. I said, yeah, I'll have the turmeric water. And he pulled it out and he said, you know what the taste, you know? And I was thinking to myself, that's such a Bajan thing. Ain't got no taste means it's not sweet. Because of course it got taste, and I love turmeric, and it tastes good to me.
And that's why we were looking for it.
Exactly. But he went to me before he was selling it to me a third time. I just making sure you realize, right? Because you know why? Because his clients, the majority of Bajans, don't want nothing that ain't sweet. So it's almost like an idea of also changing your mind about what food tastes like.
Yeah, 100%. Because you made a perfect example there.
It's not often I get Starr Bajans in conversation, so I want you to answer a few questions. First one, little girl born and raised a little Barbados and now international superstar. Any observations from when you were first burgeoning onto the scene that might be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think firstly, if we're talking about women's cricket specifically, it's grown, and women's sport on a whole, it's grown so much in the last couple of years. I remember when I first started playing cricket, it was never for what I could get out of it or what I could have become. It was always for the love of the game.
Not now though. Big money. Big money.
Yeah, and I mean with the growth of the game brought about so much, and it was mesmerizing at one point just breaking onto the scene and kind of getting hit with everything all at once. I remember once again my first Women's Big Bash League in Australia, 17 years old, and I was doing an interview at the time with England captain Hayley. She was on my team and they were interviewing us together. And I remember they would ask us questions and she kind of talk and give the perfect answer every time, and I was just there like shaking. Like this little girl from Barbados, like, don't put the pressure on me. And I remember I looked at her at the time and said, like, you know, how do you do it? How do you have the perfect answer and kind of just maintain everything that you need to maintain so perfectly while doing the interviews? And she just kind of looked at me and said, look, over time it gets easier and it comes with practice, and yeah, it just comes with the experience of it all. And I kind of look back on that now and look at where I am now, and I kind of see how relaxed we are here, sitting down, just having a chat. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a young girl from Barbados, given a massive opportunity off just the love of playing a sport, and yeah, just so fortunate for that, and look at where it's brought me now.
So freaking lucky, boy. You know, it's interesting. People say to me all the time, my God, you know, you have had an interesting career, you're working around the world. And I feel that when I was a little girl in Barbados, I had this idea, I think as small islanders, we're born with a bit of an inferiority complex, that we think, because we come from a small place, who are we to do big things? Somebody born in England or America, that was the big things, right? But actually, that was the big learning for me, was that when I got onto an international stage, I was like, oh, you're not no better than me, and you're so far from me. So I really feel now, like, especially as a big woman now, big woman to you, that I have this idea that you could be born in the back of bush,